Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Hey everybody, happy Friday. Welcome into Guerilla Sports Off Ice. JJ Jerez and Meghan Angley here to break all things down Avalanche related for you. Jesse, of course, making his way back from Salt Lake City. Apparently, this was the one day of the year he wanted to take a late flight. Jesse's the king of the 6 a.m. flight, but not today, not when we needed him the most. Since Jesse's not here today, we're going to spend as much time as we can ripping on him. We have a couple things to rip on him for. Planned. I have planned ripping session of Jesse. But Meghan, it's been about a week since we've done a show together.
Yeah.
So have you been the last week? I know you had a fun day with Nicole the other day, and
Yes.
definitely check out that interview if you haven't already. But I guess tell us about the day with the cup that you got to have.
That was such an awesome experience for Nicole to let Guerilla Sports in on such a personal day with the cup. It meant a lot to us, I think, to have that opportunity, and so we really wanted to make it great. But it was just cool to be there for the moment. It's like going to Little Man, and she had to put it in a cup in the cup. They were a little iffy on if they could put it directly in the cup, but just getting to see her eat ice cream out of the cup, and what really struck me was the meet and greet opportunity. They invited local youth girls teams, and even though it was in the middle of the workday on a Tuesday, I believe,
Mhm.
a lot of turnout. A lot of little girls and young men showed up for the opportunity to meet her, and just seeing this little girl put her goalie stick on there and have Nicole sign it, it was so sweet, and it also kind of punctuated the importance of the visibility of this women's league and what it's done even in just a year's time, and I'm so excited. Even the year ahead looks so exciting for the PWHL. They've added even more games now. They have proper jerseys and branding to kinda get hype around, and I think the NHL is already planning even more partnership, those neutral site games that they're going to try to do throughout the year as well, that I think will just continue to grow the women's game, and I'm excited for Nicole's journey as a goaltender too.
Yeah, I mean she's a stud in the PWHL, so she's not just any goaltender. So what
An
really was a big
Olympic
deal.
medalist. That was
Yeah,
like, it just had to kinda there are people who would ask, like, "Oh, what's this about? What's going on?" And I'm thinking to myself, they don't even know. They're in the presence of an Olympic gold medalist right now, and they're looking at Bernie. They're like, "What's going on? What's Bernie doing?"
pretty fun stuff though for Guerrilla Sports too. That's exciting, and hopefully she keeps allowing us to partake in more of her journey. And until Colorado gets a PWHL team, we
Yeah.
kind of have to piggyback off her, don't we?
I think too she's a great resource in that way, like, to be an advocate for a site in Colorado. I think the growth of hockey in Colorado also supports that, but having a talented athlete in the women's game from Colorado, like, you just gotta consider it as a site.
Yeah, awesome stuff. So let's get into the Avalanche a little bit. Back to 500. Not that we're surprised around here. We kind of saw this coming. We expected it. Still some juicy games left on the calendar, especially starting Sunday and Monday. I think more opportunity for the Avalanche to continue to make that step forward. But I think right now the conversation kind of has to be started with the goaltending, right? Justus Annunen jumping in net, taking over and grabbing it by the horns and just saying, I'm going to be the one that's going to right this ship for a little while. I feel bad because I feel like Georgiev probably would have done similarly. Not going to say he would have done better because that's hard to. I think Justus Annunen did really well, but I think you can also point to, and Justus Annunen, if you checked in on the Guerrilla Sports interview with him after the Seattle game, even took a second to mention how the defense has really tightened up, So I think the defense tightening up combined with the goaltending playing well is really the cause for the success we're seeing from the Avalanche, not just purely goaltending. I think either goalie would have done just fine, but it's nice to see one goalie at least stepping up and playing consistently. And that's kind of what you saw out of Justus Annunen in these last few games.
I think this was important because the conversations were starting to spiral a little bit just around goaltending in Colorado. Is UC Parkala the problem? Justus Annunen's really his only project to speak of. That's what people claim. And he's having a struggling start out the gate to start this year. What does that mean for the goaltending coach future? And we kind of agreed. The real evaluation will come when we get a little bit more to evaluate Justus Annunen, when he gets starts too, when he's not coming in
Mhm.
as relief.
Yep.
And it's still early to be making any sweeping conclusions about the goaltending, but it was so necessary because we saw better from Justus Annunen last year. So we should have anticipated that there is better than what we've seen in his, 2 games coming in relief, where the team in front of him for both Georgiev and Annunen has struggled in a lot of ways. The goaltending has struggled too, but now those things seem harmonious. It feels like those things are working together because I think the Utah game stands as a great goaltending game. The Avs did a lot of things better in their own end, and defensively on the whole did a lot of things better, but they still allowed 3 rush chances. There were some odd man rushes the other way and some breakaway opportunities, and Justus Annunen came up with saves. That's goaltending. There are things that they can take credit for too on the team playing in front of him side, but I think that we should have known he was capable of this. I like the money puck stats too. They kind of track the saves above expected and just kind of evaluating like expected goals against and then totaling the saves above expected. And he went in 6 days' time from the top 20 worst, coming in at like 12th worst in that category, to now inside the top 20 best in just 3 starts. And I think that also speaks to how early we are in the season and why it was perhaps not time to panic just yet. All of the team had some rust that they needed to shake off. But I do think that's an interesting turnaround. I think it speaks to Annunen's confidence in net. With Kakkonen going on this conditioning stint with the Eagles too, I think the Avs want to support him in the place that he's at right now because he is playing very well. I think they want to continue to give him starts where they can, get Kakkonen in some game action at the American League level before they really have to start juggling then the 3 goaltending options that are before them.
Yeah, I think the defensive structure in front of him is a key reason he's playing a lot better. Utah didn't even get their 10th shot last night until I think 4 minutes left in the second period, something along those lines. But what you've seen from Annunen in these last few games is growth, right? He's been able to improve game by game, and I think that comes with the reps, the consistent starts, and just getting into in-game action, which he wasn't really being able to see. I mean, even preseason, he got like what, a half, I think it was, maybe 2.5 games, something along those lines. So you tell me what you think the big reason for his turnaround. I don't even want to call it a turnaround because I don't know, it was so quick and it was just a brief moment of disparity there. But it feels like just getting that consistent reps, getting the knowledge of that you're starting, like you said, being able to start games and knowing that and being able to prepare for that even a day ahead, the morning of, that all makes a huge difference. And I think that combined with the defensive structure is what we're seeing out of Justus Annunen.
I think you're right too. The team playing better in front of him absolutely is a part of it because something that can't be measured, but I think is true of this group, is their own confidence building when they finally got that win against Anaheim. I think as a goaltender coming in those games after it, you feel the difference in the team playing in front of you. You can feel that they have more confidence in what they're doing, and hopefully as a result more confidence in you too. It's just sort of this circular thing where they're both feeding into each other, and as a result Annunen also feels more comfortable in himself, in his own game. At the American League level, he is routinely getting starts. So I do think the rhythm
Yep.
is also very important, getting those consistent reps like you talk about. He's not used to, needing every single start, but he'd close out series single-handedly or split them with a goaltender. But those are still more regular reps than he was getting kind of at the start of the year. It was very irregular. And so I do think some consistency and familiarity has also helped him. But I think that the confidence of the players in front of him is palpable. And as a goaltender, I think he felt that too.
Yeah, definitely a lot of things out of his game that I'm really liking, especially from the Utah game. So I'm comfortable with him starting a few more, but I still think Georgiev deserves a little bit of shot. He still
I
is
didn't
the
think it was a
first.
bad game, the Anaheim
Mhm.
for Yuriev.
Yeah. He played fine, and I think considering the strength of schedule here these next couple games, obviously with the back-to-back, he's probably going to get one of them. As long as he shows out well and the Avalanche continue the trajectory that they've been on these last few games, who knows? Who knows how they manage the goaltending situation? It's going to feel, I don't know. It almost feels like with Kakkonen, you brought up his conditioning stint. Maybe the Avalanche are sitting there and be like, maybe we jumped a little too early at that. Maybe we don't necessarily need a Kakkonen right now. It's going to be nice to have, in case of emergency, break glass and bring out Kakkonen. But the goalies are kind of figuring out their stride. The defensive structure is also figuring out some things. And it feels like these two goalies are going to be just fine. I'm not saying I don't want to see Kakkonen. I'm super excited to see him and see what he can bring to the table. But it almost feels like the Avalanche jumped the gun a little bit on that one.
I think too, people are starting to talk about the starters net. Like, whose net is it right now? And I don't think it's anyone's.
Mhm.
I don't think it's Annunen's either. I think he's making a case for that. But I still think, Kakkonen is intriguing, and I think they intentionally wanted it open-ended like this to be sort of a goalie battle between the three. I still think it's between all three goaltenders. Justus Annunen has come kind of ahead in that horse race, but I do think that they're going to really value that, because if I were to more seriously talk about Annunen as the F starter, I would still feel really sketchy around Annunen, in a 7-game playoff series. I just
Mhm.
don't really know. I have seen at the American League level how he has performed in the postseason, and it has been a tale of two seasons. There was one postseason in his first year, he was incredible. Second year was a little bit difficult for him. And so I don't know that I would feel comfortable saying Justus Annunen is the Avs starter right now. It's way too early, and that's why I think Kakkonen, I don't think they jumped the gun. I think that hopefully, for not the wrong reasons, this is something that will prove to be very valuable to have sort of in the rotation as an option.
Yeah, I mean, Annunen's only played 21 games still in the NHL, so it's really early, but it's also really early in the season. They have all season long to kind of figure this out. By the end of the season, the playoffs, I'm sure they'll have a clear designated 1 and a clear designated 2, and that's the end of the conversation. But right now is kind of the time to try this out. Keep throwing different goalies out there. Keep throwing different opponents at each goalie and see who thrives and who kind of stands above the other two.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that plays out this week, but definitely feel a Annunen Georgiev combo here in these next 2 games, because Ottawa comes into town on Sunday and then Chicago on Monday. So naturally, you got to split that up.
Yeah.
I think also big thing for the Avalanche, a key element that's been helping them pile on these wins is the depth scoring, right? We've seen Ross Colton step up and continue to do what he's done since the beginning of the season, but we've also seen Joel Kiviranta. We've seen Ivan jump in there in the scoring along with the top guys. And I think that's exactly what the Avalanche need. That's the recipe for this team to be successful. You can't just put all the weight on the power play and on Mikko Rantanen, Cale Makar, and Nathan MacKinnon. It has to be a nice combination of everybody chipping in. And through spurts that we see the Avalanche struggle through the last couple of years, they tend to start leaning a little bit too much on those top guys. It's been nice to see the whole lineup contribute.
Yeah, it's coming from pretty unexpected places too, but they needed tertiary scoring and they needed 5v5 scoring, and that's sort of been alleviated in both. Like, the players that are scoring at even strength are also the depth players that you wanted to see get on the score sheet. It's hilariously kind of outnumbered by Kiviranta right now, but you are seeing Ivan on that as well, and I think there's more room to give. I think the bottom 6 right now is still kind of figuring some things out. They made a decision with Cal Ritchie, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, but that has now changed kind of the makeup of the bottom 6 too, and so they're still trying to figure out those lines, but I think Ivan is a player who has been trying to thrive anywhere that he's been placed, and it's sort of been solidly on that 4th line, but with kind of different line mates at points, and I think that he has emerged as a very versatile player in that way, and his contributions unfortunately, Ross Colton leaves the game, but to be put on the top power play unit in that middle spot is one, such a great reflection of the trust that he's earning with the coaching staff. But for him to also turn that into a scoring opportunity is so incredible. I know that's not, 5v5 scoring, but what an accomplishment for Ivan, who just a year ago was on only an American League contract.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Always fun to see a guy get his first NHL goal, but I also think you got to credit this power play, right? It's amazing that they just run the exact same system and just say, "Hey, just do what Ross Colton's been doing and you'll be fine." And they run the exact same play and it looks exactly like Ross Colton's 3 of his last what is he at right now? 8 goals? 7 goals? Ross Colton? Somewhere around there. But 3 of them have been scored from that exact spot in that exact way. So for Ivan to just jump in and make it seamless, I think that's great on Ivan, but it also just speaks to how dialed in they have this power play, and they're just playing chess out there. Nathan MacKinnon just knows exactly what needs to happen, feeds that puck over. As long as you just shoot it right when you get it, don't dust it off, you should be fine.
It is such an impressive top unit right now, and it was sort of the lone bright spot in the dark days that I don't wanna remember that are only, a couple weeks removed, but now that they're winning games, it's easy to move on from it, but the power play was a consistent bright spot for a reason, and we talked about how we wanted to see more 5v5 scoring outside of it, but I think it's not something you wanna abandon too quickly too. Why that has been successful has been the strength of the top guys who are familiar with playing one another, but also the way that they have adopted to some of the new pieces coming in. The way that Casey Middlestat has fit in on that top unit has helped to move that puck and cycle it on the power play to create some of these opportunities. They've needed to create some time and space before that MacKinnon play is even made possible, and that was true of this power play. I think Ivan broke his stick. It was still on the ice, kind of moving, like the puck moves off of it. As a result, this goal, the puck gets back to MacKinnon, and I think it's important to note how a Casey Middlestat and a Ross Colton, who I think was doing good things in addition to just being good in the middle and receiving MacKinnon feeds. It's gonna be a shame if Ross Colton's off that, but I think Middlestat's contributions are so huge.
Yeah, I think you're kind of seeing the top guys really put some trust in the guys that maybe aren't normally with them and that maybe normally they might not trust them. But right now you're kind of seeing everybody on the same page. Mikko Rantanen keeps finding these great passes that he's making, usually to Ross Colton. And I think that speaks volumes when you have your top guys putting that trust in the guys that are subbing almost, right? The guys just filling in some holes here and there. That's been, I think, pivotal for them and pivotal for Ross Colton. You even see Ross Colton's face when he scores a goal. He's kind of in disbelief at this point, like, wow, I'm still on this streak. I'm still burying goals. This is amazing. But he couldn't do that without the trust of a Mikko Rantanen and a Nathan MacKinnon feeding him the pucks and having, I keep throwing the word trust, but I can't think of a better word for it. Having the trust that he's going to put himself in the right spot and make sure he's burying those goals. So love what I'm seeing out of Ross Colton. Sounds like he got a hand to this or a stick to the hand,
Yeah.
which really sucks if it's something that can keep him out of a game. That might be something that lingers a while because you need your hands in hockey. So hopefully that doesn't keep him out of the lineup too much because yes, the Avalanche have been piling wins. They've been persevering through a lot of big injuries, but at some point that's got to give.
Yeah, sorry, I was looking at, I wanna say it's this Ross Colton goal too, that started the game. The play where they give because it was a 5-on-3, right?
Mhm.
And I hope I'm not misremembering this, but they allow an odd man rush the other way on their own power play. But it was a Mikko Rantanen stick play that helped to move the play back up ice into the offensive zone,
Well,
and
you're right because Mikko Rantanen fell in the offensive zone, and that's what caused the puck to head the other way. And Mikko Rantanen back checked his ass off, right?
I wanna shout this out,
Yeah.
like, why the top guys are also the top guys for reasons beyond the skill in the offensive zone. It was the play he made back in his own end to recover from this that I think it's like, we talk about how these guys are so lucky they get to play with each other, like how Mikko Rantanen would be a team's best player on another NHL team, and he's kind of third in the conversation sometimes in Colorado, and just wanted to highlight that they're not just good because they get to play with each other, they're also just individually good, and it's little things like that. Not necessarily him falling, because it's not the first time that has led to some kind of mistake, but recovering from it in that way is such a pro and Miko thing, that you do count on the top guys to be able to do.
I love the accountability there too. Like, I made the mistake. I'm going to put in 110% to cover up this mistake. And not only did he cover up the mistake, but he turned it into a scoring opportunity the other way.
That's exactly, yes, Mikko Rantanen.
I think in that same vein, I've seen Calum Makar really take a step forward as a leader. You know, I only watched the game on TV, so I'm limited to what they show me, but it felt like Calum Makar was very vocal and very positive with a lot of his teammates, making sure to credit people when they deserved the credit and they did something well. It really feels like Calum Makar is embracing that there is no captain on the team right now. Somebody has to step up and be that leader in the positivity side of things. And I just love what I'm seeing out of Calum Makar. Really seems like he's elevated himself in that regard and kind of taking some guys under his wing and helping, making sure everybody's on the same page and doing what they're supposed to.
I think it's important after, when Taves missed some time and Makar was challenged with different pairings, he really took that personally, that he wasn't performing very well.
Mhm.
And I think, Taves coming back isn't the reason that the play has returned to the Makar that we know. I think that was a personal accountability thing from Makar. He was really disappointed in his personal play to start the year, and there were uncharacteristic mistakes there. And I think he has done so much in taking ownership of his game to clean that up and be so much better in his own end, which is kind of what you come to expect from him, but also taking on that leadership role and helping to instruct while on the ice in that way, especially, in the offensive zone. I think that he can really, as the guy kind of walking the blue line in search of the perfect play, be the kind of player to dictate that, especially with guys on the ice maybe who need a little bit more of that guidance. And I love to see that from him. I think that he's such an important leader in this group, and he's at his best when he's feeling comfortable with where his game is at.
I feel like the perception of him is that he's really quiet. He's like a Joe Sakic type, just do what I do, not as I say. But to see him kind of being vocal and being that leader that tells people what they need to hear, or just tells them, "Hey, good job, nice pass." I think that's I don't know. I guess something I've never really noticed out of him, and I'm hoping that it is something that he's actively working on, because he's awesome in that role.
He really is. I think there's maybe, in the past this view that it's not his place. Like there's these other established leaders on the team, and he wants to sort of make an impact in a different way through his play, but I think he's come to understand that he can do both of those things and that he is a valuable voice in the room as a leader.
What would you say has gotten into Kiviranta? Why is he scoring so many goals all of a sudden?
I don't know how to talk about this because it's exciting and we need to talk about it. I also don't know how sustainable or, sustainable. I don't know how sustainable it is over the long term. But what I like about what Kiviranta has done, just to put it into perspective, he had 3 goals in 56 games last year, and he's had 4 goals in 8 games to start this year. It's a huge improvement. I mean, it's already surpassed his goal total from last year, so he's well on track to exceed that in a way that's believable throughout the course of the year. I think what has served him well is being opportunistic. I've seen more of that, and I think that's what's being rewarded right now. I don't, because he's the type of player we talk about in the hits column. He always ends up leading the team in hits or close to it in a sneaky way that you don't always normally see that kind of physicality on the ice. So I do think he's a very loud player. That's why I think he's here another year, and he's constantly been in that 13th forward conversation for a reason. The goal scoring is just kind of an anomaly. It's not really why he's here, but to see him step up into play and just kind of unleash this sneaky snapshot that I didn't know that he
Yeah.
had has been so exciting to see. And I think where this isn't totally sustainable, but there's a better Kiviranta that I think we've seen than last year, is when this team returns to fuller health and the talent that plays alongside him feels a little more complete and intentional. I think that we still continue to see a more productive Kiviranta so long as he continues to be as opportunistic as he has been.
Yeah, when you mentioned the hits category stat, typically in hockey, that means that he's spending more of the game chasing the puck around than having the puck. That's why he's getting a lot of hits. But this is where I think the Avalanche have been doing a good job, particularly the coaching staff, of doing their homework and making sure that they're making the adjustments needed, because I think Kiviranta has suddenly found himself not necessarily chasing the puck around and playing only a defensive role. They're generating offense with that bottom line. They're generating a little bit more opportunity, and he's just capitalizing it. Like you said, it's an anomaly. He's operating at a pretty high shooting percentage in this little window, and that'll eventually regress back to the mean. But the bigger picture is that they're generating the offense, and I think that starts in the defensive end. They're taking care of business defensively and able to get the puck down to the other side and ultimately end up with a Kiviranta shot that goes in.
And
Great.
I think, the compliment too is kind of playing with a player like Wood, because we saw a pretty good version of Kiviranta playing with Wood in the playoffs last year. And I think what those two do well together, which helps the possession in the offensive zone, is win battles. And they chip in pucks and they go and retrieve them, and they're unafraid to go to those greasy areas to do it. They kind of count on that being the way that they're going to get the puck and establish the zone. And I think Wood does this well. Wood has the speed for the entries to do this well. And so together, I think that's why he's maybe chasing the puck a little bit less, is because he's with a guy who's pretty good at winning those battles and helping to get the puck back on their sticks.
Now let's go to Jesse for his public apology and saying how he was so very wrong about Kiviranta. Jesse,
You owe the man an apology. Chloe texted me and said he needs to publicly apologize to Yoel Kiviranta.
Oh, it's not the first time Jesse's been wrong. Jesse just last week on our show, when it was just him and I, said that he thinks Calum Ritchie is going to stay in the NHL this season.
I just wanted to talk about it for a second, because I was on a show with all three of us where I said through, I think at that point, 3 games,
Mm-hmm.
I had not seen enough to justify him staying. And there are people in the chat that were like, the guy with the hat, Jesse, knows what he's talking about. And I took it personally, like, well, I also know what I'm talking about. And it is not to dunk on Cal Ritchie. I think that he has a lot to be proud of, and I actually really wanted to see him play through all the 9 games. I did find it a bit surprising that they made the decision sooner than they needed to.
Well, I think it's clear that Arturi Lehkonen is just right around the corner, and so somebody had to be the stopgap until bodies started coming back. And so I think Cal Ritchie was that perfect guinea pig to, hey, let's give him up to 9 games, no more. Obviously didn't make it quite the 9 games, but let's see what he's got. And then hopefully by the time he's, we're ready to make a decision on him, Arturi Lehkonen is ready to pop back in. So it kind of worked out in their favor that that Cal Ritchie didn't excel and they're forced to hold on to him here, because then now it opens up a little more space for Arturi Lehkonen, because I don't necessarily think Parker Kelly, Kiviranta, I almost said Chris Wagner, but we'll see, it deserves to go to the AHL right now. So of that group of guys that you have to either keep or move to another team, it felt like Cal Ritchie was kind of doing the least. So it was a fine idea to try him out. I thought he showed moments of greatness, spurts of it, but apparently to the coaching staff, it wasn't enough to keep him around the full year. Still sending him back to Oshawa, and I'm sure they sent him back with a whole grocery list of, hey, this is what we want you to work on. Now that we've seen you here in the NHL, we see some holes here, we see some holes here. This you've done great at. Keep working on that. Keep doing this. So hopefully he has a whole idea of what he needs to approach the rest of the season in Oshawa. But yeah, just put it on hold for now. We're going to see Cal Ritchie back as an Avalanche, and he's going to do great.
I think the things I want to address around the Cal Ritchie conversation, first of all, there's a sentiment that there's nothing for him to gain at the OHL level anymore. And I think that's too black and white. I would much rather prefer to see Ritchie in the American League right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that he looked a step behind his peers in was the pace. And the best way to get acclimated to pace is to play in a league that at least mirrors it more similarly. The American League would be a step above the OHL in that, right? And that's where it's a bit of a disappointment. But there is still plenty for him to gain at the OHL level. And that's what I think I felt some frustration around he did miss a year also. I know that he's 19 years old, so it does feel like of some of his peers that I've compared him to, like a Seneca, he should be a year ahead of them, but he did miss a season because of this shoulder injury, more or less, like in totality. That is a significant development year for a young player to miss out on. It's not just physically hard, mentally too. That's still an important mental development year. I think his maturity is exactly where you want to see it. The work ethic is where you want to see it. And the skill upside, as you mentioned, there were highs. It's there. You should be absolutely excited about this prospect. The Avs did not make a mistake taking him in the first round as the first pick of the first round picks in that round. But there are parts of his game that are so raw. I've compared Seneca, but even a better example like the Leo Carlsson of last year or Will Smith right now in San Jose. Young players who are making this adjustment very similarly to Cal Ritchie. With Leo Carlsson, they had a specific development plan. They sheltered his minutes intentionally, like not having him play in games. Sort of at the start of the year to get him adjusted, and they could afford to do that. They could afford to shelter him in that way, and they had that as part of the plan. Kind of similarly, Will Smith, this is happening with him as well in San Jose, and they can very intentionally do this as part of the plan. The Avs, one, have needed bodies, so they don't really have that luxury, and when they do have health, they don't have the opportunity then to just be putting him in and sitting guys when they have needed those bodies, and then when they return to health, they still need those guys in the lineup. Like, the opportunity just hasn't existed. The organization is not in the place of an Anaheim or San Jose to kind of make those development plans, because I could see Cal Ritchie succeeding at the NHL level in this year if he followed a similar plan. I just don't think that would have been available to him with the Avs in the window that they're at, with the state of the health at the start of this year. I just don't think it's similar enough. And that's where I think he has a ladder. He's going to go and he's going to be a leader with the Gens, and he's going to have an incredibly huge role because he missed a year's time too. There's still more for him to give at this level, because in the World Junior Showcase and the rookie face-off, I don't think he stood out among his peers quite the way that he would have needed to for me to like really see this. The way that Celebrini performed in the rookie face-off, for example, should serve as an interesting contrast. Like, Ritchie did well, but he did not pop off the same way that you need to see him if you're really saying he doesn't have anything to gain at the OHL level. And he's still going to have an opportunity to represent Team Canada in the World Juniors, where we can also that's just another piece of information on Cal Ritchie to see, is he finally there? Like, is he ready to start popping off in among his peers? I think he has room to separate, is what I'm saying. He still does. And now he has lots of opportunity in Oshawa to be a top guy, continue being the top guy, I should say, and be a leader. I just don't think the Avs missed the mark with Ritchie. I think there's still so much for him to gain in this next year of development, and he's such an exciting prospect and player who is so close to being NHL ready that it's not anything we should feel sad about. But I am excited for his future too.
Well, he got to spend 2 months at the NHL level. Yeah, I'm sure in Oshawa, they're going to get him back and be like, whoa, he has gotten better. Wow, he's gotten faster.
He should be insane in the OHL this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And then getting that opportunity to play World Juniors as well. That's just another chance to elevate his game and keep pushing it rather than, kind of staying stagnant at the junior level. The problem is, as the Avalanche continue to get some guys healthy and get guys back, suddenly the role for him starts to diminish, and maybe he starts to slide down the lineup a little bit.
He struggled when he moved down in the lineup with the more blue-collar role. It was harder for him.
I have to bring it back to Ross Colton, because that's kind of my thought right now. We're seeing him really perform well, really add to his goal tally, but he's really just holding a place for Jonathan Drouin. Once Jonathan Drouin comes back in, what does Ross Colton's role look like? How do you continue to put Ross Colton in a position to keep building off of what he's already built so far in this early season? And I don't think putting him down back on the third line is really the answer. So I think the Avs coaching staff kind of has some tricks to juggle when it comes to that. And Cal Ritchie was kind of the same thing. So it all depends on his mindset, right? I'd hate for him to go back to Oshawa and be bummed and be like, shoot, I missed my opportunity, and then maybe approach that season a little bit differently. Hopefully he's invigorated and said, man, I got to sniff it. I want more of that. I need to work on everything that they told me to work on. And, I'm sure he's feeling cool walking back into that locker room and being like, boys, I got to be in the NHL for a little bit. I cashed some big checks. What's up? How you guys been? So hopefully he walks back in and flourishes in that role rather than, letting it hinder him.
I think too it's a disservice to Ritchie to suggest he has nothing to learn because good players can find growth anywhere. And I think that he can find ways to continue to challenge himself to be better with Oshawa. And I think that's a testament to who Ritchie is as a player, and he deserves some credit there too.
Finally, we're kind of ripping through this show, but that's okay. It's a Friday show. I know people have plans. It's Halloween weekend, technically, right? Since Halloween's in the middle of the week next week, people are celebrating, including Chloe, who's running our show right now. She wants to get out of here and go get her costume on. So last conversation I really wanted to have before we look ahead at the next two games is just a check-in on the defense. How's the defense doing? You brought up Devon Taves, not exactly stepping in and being the difference maker for the entire team, but he's brought some stability back to the lineup.
No, that's exactly the word I'd use. I think one of the post-game comments during the dark days was about Devon Taves. Like, does Devon Taves returning fix this? And I kind of felt like a little bit yes, not because Devon Taves alone single-handedly cures everything, but the balance that he restores to those D groups and the stability that he provides, I think shouldn't be understated. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing now. Like, it's a shame to hear that Shillington's been battling illness, but it's sort of made then the options and the pairs just kind of come together seamlessly. And I've liked, obviously, Taves Makar when they're together, Gerard Manson, but I've liked Malinsky more with Dahan. I like Ludwig too. I haven't seen enough to like really have an opinion, but it just all felt like it's been righted and these players looked a little bit more like themselves, to include Cale Makar. I think he just is made better when Taves is there, not because Taves is like giving him something, I don't know, skill-wise. It's more like they can just assume the roles they were meant to when they're not trying to be too much because the other one is out. I think both of them, fall victim to that when the other is out, is trying to do too much and overcompensate for the absence of the other.
Yeah, you definitely saw Cale Makar playing loose last night against Utah. Even saw him behind the net a couple times. The net he's trying to score on, not his own net. So yeah, he provides some stability, provides a breath of fresh air. And Malinsky, I agree. He's been awesome, but I think you could just look at the group as a whole and kind of feel that the season just kind of started 2 weeks early for him. Because even Calvin DeHaan, a guy I was kind of ripping on every time he had the puck, I like what he brings defensively, but when he has the puck, he makes me a little nervous. But even him last night, you saw him do his version of a tornado and skate around with some confidence and some control. And I was like, whoa, was that Calvin DeHaan? So it just feels like the goaltending, the defensive structure, everything but goal scoring, because goal scoring was there. Offense is always here in Colorado. Everything else kind of needed a second to start getting into the rhythm and getting some comfort.
I think so too. I don't even know if consistency is the right word, but I do think having some familiarity back is helpful. This is just a total deviation, actually. I was going to go off on another tangent.
Do it.
I wanted to shout out the Utah game for Malinsky specifically. Just in both ends, I loved what I saw from him. Good stick at the net, big blocks. Honestly, from the team as a whole, big blocks. I really like that. That's where the defensive effort from the whole team deserves something of a shout out.
Yep.
And then a good controlled breakout and a big factor on Kiviranta's goal because he makes his play along the wall to force a turnover and then just returns to the point. Like, he understands it's so responsible, but similarly, you pair it along his instinct to activate on the middle stat goal where he tries for the wraparound, and it's a good balance of knowing when to get his looks without abandoning responsibility that I think we've talked about around Malinsky for some time, but it feels like he's really figuring that out, like when to take those risks and when to just be responsible. And I think that we're going to really love the version of the player that comes out of all of this.
You know what I loved, and this has nothing to do with the X's and O's itself, but it tells you a little bit about where his mindset is. He's standing in front of Annunen, whistle blows, and the Utah guy tries to engage him and start a little scrum with him. Malinsky doesn't even react. He just stares at him, doesn't even say a word. And I think it was Manson that came in and tried to get in the guy's face and play the role of security guard. But I was like, man, Malinsky looks composed, tough, and just confident. And that's something we've known from him from speaking to him, but
Right.
seeing it on the ice, seeing him, put it into display, I'm like, man, Malinsky, he's really scoring some points with me left and right.
So is Ross Colton, who unfortunately, because he leaves with an injury, like, I got kind of sad, but I really loved the way he's been playing. And the third person I wanted to shout out was Casey Middlestat, who has not been without praise and recognition on this show. So, maybe it's just wanting to talk hype about Middlestat, but he's obviously a good playmaker. But we knew that about him. What I think I liked that I've seen over these last couple of games is what we've seen him do below the goal line, how he's good in the tough areas. He's sturdier than he looks. I think he's sturdier than maybe I've given him credit for,
Mhm.
and he can wear contact well and still find those seams. That's where, like, he doesn't lose sight of who he is, and I think that his skill in the top 6 has helped to move the puck on the cycle, which has helped the possession game and as a result, the goal scoring. But he's such a versatile and complementary player too that in playing with like a Kovalenko and an OC, you can see the way that he recognizes the strengths of their game and embraces it, like leans into that a little bit more. And so you see him engaging in these battles, making plays along the wall, and still, like a hockey chameleon is the word I have written here. He can maintain possession through those battles, but he's engaging them more too, I think, because of the way that a Kovalenko and an OC like to play. And he's still staying true to himself. So he still has that, like he makes passes that you just don't think would even be possible. And I've loved his fit. Just, I don't think we've ever doubted it, but gosh, he just looks so good in the top 6, and what I've liked is, we kind of envisioned who he'd be playing with when he signed his extension. He's not playing with those guys right now, and I still love what I see.
Yeah, we've talked about how MacKinnon likes playing with him because they think the game similarly. You saw that in action a little bit last night. And he's just the epitome of what happens when a player needs a change of scenery. I think back to Ryan O'Reilly when he was in Buffalo and the comments he made after one of their seasons about, hey, he kind of lost the passion a little bit, and that's, you can draw that perfect parallel with Casey Middlestat, plays the same position, was also playing in Buffalo, and kind of seemed like he lost the passion for hockey a little bit. Now you plant him into Colorado, he gets a sniff of playoff action, and that had to reinvigorate him as well during the offseason and say, okay, now I'm excited again. Now I'm ready to get to work. Now I want to improve on my game and improve on who I've become as a player because this is fun to me again. So it's amazing, some players just simply do need that change of scenery to blossom. And it feels like that's exactly what Casey Middlestat needed. And I love seeing what he's been doing because he's been awesome. Anytime he gets the puck on his stick, it's just fun to watch and fun to see trying to dissect what he's thinking and what he's seeing.
He's an interesting player too. He's pretty quiet,
Mhm.
but I think it was recently, maybe even in like the post game or pre-game, that he talked about how people have kind of underestimated Colorado's depth at the start of this year. And there was a sense of pride in talking, but like people shouldn't have counted us out because of a lack of depth. Like we've had the depth. It's just there've been some growing pains, I think. And I just like the confidence of which he delivered that, kind of a jab at the haters, at the naysayers. And I want to see that in a player, especially a team that started the year the way that they did. You're kind of looking around the room like, where is the source of hope and inspiration going to come from here? Who's going to be that? And I think that he is, just in a quiet way. I don't think he's in the locker room yapping people's ears off about it, but I think that there's a lot of pride and belief in that locker room, and I like to see it in a player who's a relatively new addition.
Yeah, he's quiet, but he's not afraid to say what he needs to say.
Yeah, he's honest.
Yeah, I like that about him. What do you make of the Shillington news? Staying at home sick, as you brought up. It's already been a bumpy start for Shillington. I guess what's your takeaway? Is this just another hall pass that he's getting to, kind of stumble his way through the beginning of the season? Or how do you think this is all handled and approached?
Look, I think he needs to change the scenery. I don't know what to make of it. He probably is sick. Okay, I know a lot of people who are sick right now. It gets worse and worse. Like I don't know if the illness has had any impact on the play that we have seen because it's not been good in the preseason and in the regular season. What we've seen, it just hasn't started to make sense yet. And this is just yet another delay to like the opportunity to see more of him. And he hasn't done enough to warrant seeing more, over a DeHaan or a Ludwig. And so at this point, I don't know what to make of it. I hope that he heals up, and I just need to see something entirely different from what I've seen to justify Shillington in Colorado. Otherwise, I think he's a player who could benefit from a change of scenery.
Yeah, I agree. It kind of seems like both sides would happily agree to part ways. Just tough because we never really got to see what he actually is capable of, never really got into a rhythm, but hey, sometimes it's just not a good fit, and it's okay to admit that. Only problem is right now, his stock isn't too high, so you're not going to get much of a return for him, but maybe just simply unleashing him will help provide a little bit of cap flexibility and, maybe make way for a guy like Ludwig to step up and really be able to show what he's got.
What do you think of the big hat?
The big hat. We got into it. It's fun, especially with a room that, you've been there. You've walked into a losing locker room and how depressing it can be. Well, I think it's a nice way to lighten the mood a little bit, especially, Jesse and I kind of broke it down when Nathan MacKinnon was the first recipient of it. Seeing him put it on and then keep a straight face was just like, I don't know. It gave me a good chuckle, and it's just seeing Nathan MacKinnon still trying to be super serious with a silly hat on. I think it was a great move by Gabe Landeskog to implement this into the locker room and let people, have fun with the game, because after all, it is a game and it's supposed to be fun.
I'm cracking up over Justus Annunen saying that there isn't pressure to decide who gets it next. Just give it to somebody you don't like. I kind of love to see a glimpse at a sense of humor from Annunen. I like the levity that's been injected back into the locker room as a result of this freaking little hat that's not so little, but I have concerns about how they clean it.
Yeah, it's going to get disgusting.
I'm really, really worried about it.
And I don't know if anybody out there has seen one of these hats, because I was always curious until I saw it up close in Nathan MacKinnon. How does that hat stay on your head? There's a big piece of foam on the inside that is, a regular hat sized, and obviously can expand and contract to different head sizes. So that piece of foam is going to get repulsive and smelly.
It's going directly on the sweatiest heads you could ever imagine. I don't know. They need to have a liner or something.
Yeah. So I think the road trip was really good timing for these guys. It was a small road trip. It wasn't that long. It wasn't that far away. It was a good way for them to kind of get away from things and reset, and that they did. We'll see how they handle the next coming week and see where we're at in a week from now. But it feels like things are back on the right track for this team, and that's before you're starting to get guys healthy again. So as long as we're feeling good before the guys get healthy, once they get in, everything's going to be fine and dandy.
Yeah, I feel a lot better, and it's still been some pretty weird lineups, and they are just returning to Avalanche hockey, and I think they're sticking to that a little more closely than they did at the start, and it rewards them. So I'm really excited. I think they can continue to win games with this lineup.
And these goalies.
And I think it only gets better from here when Jonathan Drouin returns and eventually an Arturi Lehkonen, and then we start getting into the big conversations in November, which is crazy to think is not that far away.
Yeah, it's insane. We're flying through the season already. Almost an eighth of the way there. Cool. Well, that's all I have. Anything on your notes that you want to get to?
No, I ADHD'd it enough.
You're fine.
Malinsky. I think we covered it.
It's great. It's a Friday show. We're loose. We don't have the negative weight of Jesse on our shoulders today.
I just want to know how he feels about Joel Kiviranta. He'd probably still say something negative. He can't keep it up.
He'll double down. You know it. He'll double down.
And that's why I want Kiviranta to be insane this year. Not just despite Jesse, but also for himself.
Yeah, I'm here for all the Finnish players to play really well. That's why I'm excited to see Kakkonen too, right? If you can get Kakkonen and Annunen with UC Parkala, poor Georgiev's going to be out, kind of, feel like the odd man out.
But I train in Finland,
yeah,
guys.
I've kind of got connections. Yeah. So no, I like the direction things are going. Everything seems to be trending the right way, and we'll see how Sunday and Monday go. Of course, we'll be back to break it all down for you next week with the same amount of shows, same amount of pregame, postgame coverage, and it's always more fun to do it at home. So let's see if they can write their home record now that it seems like everything else is going the right way.
Fins against Jesse. Hashtag. I love it.
All right, guys. Well, have a beautiful weekend. Be safe if you're getting down and dirty with it, celebrating Halloween, getting spooky on us. Yeah, that's all I have for you guys. So thanks for hanging out with us today. We'll see you guys next week. For Megan, I'm JJ. This has been Off Ice.